Welcome to this Lessons Learned information session on the effective risk management of elevated work platforms used in the contracting chain. Before we start, I'd like to reinforce that references to any particular matter does not suggest that it was absent or deficient at the time of the event we are going to discuss, only that each matter is important to the prevention of its reoccurrence. What we will provide is an outline of some of the key considerations, but not the details of what must be done. In effect, think of this as being a menu, providing details of the dishes for each course, but not the contents of each dish. We thank you for taking the time to listen and hopefully learn from this event. For your information, a copy of this presentation is accessible from the website. Lyons Construction wants to raise awareness of processes that needs to be managed to protect the health and safety of workers and others potentially affected by the use of an EWP. We will review potential risks that should be considered by various parties, including, but not limited to 1, the principal contractor, 2, the subcontractor, and 3, the EWP operator. Risks such as the selection and suitability of the EWP for the task and its fitness for use. Safe operation of the plant in the environment it's intended to be used. Safe system of work from within the plant and/or safety of others, including members of the public affected by the plant's operation or safe system of work. This presentation has evolved from insights gained from an investigative process surrounding an incident which occurred on a Lyons Construction project site. Again, I repeat, we acknowledge that the presentation is not intended to be exhaustive, and you should carefully consider your particular circumstances and seek your own advice as appropriate. Lyons Construction was the principal contractor engaged to construct a large aged care facility, a building which was predominantly of single-storey nature, with some sections of the building having a second floor. The second floor external facade was required to be rendered. An experienced subcontractor was engaged. Rendering works was delayed, and as a result a steel structure was erected and fixed to the building in front of the window. The structure had open sections. The subcontractor provided a swim for the task, including the provision of the EWP to access the second floor works. On the 8th of February 2017, the subcontractor was undertaking preparation works to protect the window frames and glazing from planned rendering works. As work progressed, the EWP with 2 occupants was lowered and driven under the fixed structure. The plant operator and the second person were required to position themselves below the top handrail as the EWP was driven under the structure. In the course of the EWP travels, it appears the second occupant jumped up to rectify some glazing protection which had come loose when he sustained substantial abdominal injuries from being crushed between the handrail and the fixed structure. Having knowledge of the event's occurrence, its outcome and seriousness of the injuries to the employees, this presentation aims to explore lessons learned to prevent its reoccurrence, in particular addressing the following 4 elements. 1, risk management. 2, the subcontractor. 3, the elevated work platform. And 4, the swims. Starting with risk management. Risk management is defined within ISO 31000 as the practice of understanding 1, what risks exist, and 2, ensuring controls are effective and efficient to manage the risks. The management of the risks in this instance involves 3 areas, namely the subcontractor operator, the EWP, and the work process, and means to manage controls using the SWIM. Subcontractors. The principal contractor on site has an obligation to ensure, so far as it is reasonably practical, that the subcontractor is capable of undertaking works in a safe manner. In this case, the subcontractor's capability related to the provision of an EWP, thereafter its use and operation, the provision of a SWIM for the task and the operation of the EWP. The EWP. In using an EWP, we have introduced new risks associated with the EWP, which need to be managed by the principal contractor and subcontractor. For the subcontractor, they are 2. Ensure that the EWP itself is suitable for the task in that it can reach or has capacity for the workload and is suitable to the work environment. That the EWP has been maintained and will continue to be fit for use. That the operator is competent and can provide verification of such competency to operate the EWP, and provide information such as a swim for the task or activity, which includes the use of the EWP and includes emergency preparedness. Provision of a plant risk assessment to allow the operator to be made aware of the safety requirements. Operations manual to understand the EWP characteristics. For example, one type of EWP will alarm when occurring at or over 18 degrees, whilst another will stop working. The principal contractor should, before its first use, ensure it is the best fit for the task that is proposed, taking into account issues such as all-terrain versus petrol versus diesel. Will it reach the task safely? Can it carry the proposed load safely? Can it operate safely within the work environment? For example, not using a combustible plant inside of an enclosed room such as a cooler store. That it is fit for use and has been maintained, including ensuring guards and safety devices are in place and operational. The operators have been trained in the use of EWP and can provide verification of such competency. That the operator is aware of and has access to the plant risk assessment for his attention and action. Provision of a swim specific for the task includes the EWP operation and emergency preparedness. Work process. Swims. There are 19 high-risk construction activities, of which movement of mobile plant is one of the activities specified in Regulation 322 of the 2017 OHS regulations, for which a swim is mandatory. Accordingly, the subcontractor should provide the swim for the task, activity, and include the use of the operation of the EWP. Don't forget to improve provisions for dealing with potential emergencies. As the subcontractor has the knowledge on how the work is to be undertaken, the EWP hazards can also be attained from the plant risk assessment and incorporated into the swim. Overall, the swim is required to identify high-risk construction work and state the hazards and risks of that work and describe measures to control risks in line with the hierarchy of control methodology, which we will soon discuss, and describe how the risk control measures are to be implemented and is set out in a way that is readily accessible and comprehensible. Finally, the subcontractor should ensure that individuals about to perform the task are involved in the swim development, or at the very least have an opportunity to review the swim and add to the swim as required in line with the consultation guidelines. The principal contractor shall ensure, so far as reasonably practical, that they have an opportunity to review the swim for adherence with the legislative requirements, organisational requirements, or as a means of imparting information about the proposed task, hazards and or controls. The principal contractor and subcontractor shall monitor the task activity to ensure it is undertaken in accordance with the SWIM, as agreed by the work team, and in line with Regulation 327, which states that we must not perform high-risk construction activities if there is a risk to the health and safety of any person arising from that work. And if there is non-compliance with the SWIM in relation to a particular work, stop the work immediately or as soon as it's safe to do so, and not resume the work until the SWIM is complied with, reviewed and or revised. Note: the principal contractor management representative should be trained or informed about risks associated with the EWP use to be able to properly review SWIMs and monitor subcontractors in the use of the EWP. To summarise, if the work, task or activity involves any one of the 19 high-risk construction activities, then using the plan, do, check and act process, the principal contractor and subcontractor should ensure the SWIM process is effective. How? Plan. The subcontractor provides a SWIM which explains the task, activities and associated risks, hazards, document controls and who will implement them. Do. Implementation of the SWIM. Subcontractor shall implement controls as per the SWIM. Check. Principal contractor shall review the SWIM and monitor it for its compliance, ensuring the controls are effective, meet organisational requirements and in line with industry knowledge. And finally, act. Where deficiencies exist, modify the SWIM for compliance or inclusion of unforeseen risks or deficient controls. The rendering process requires work to be performed at a height above 2 metres. Regulation 44 of the Falls Prevention Control of Risk applies, or it is better known, the hierarchy of control methodology. Let's analyse the hierarchy of controls options for any proposed rendering work at heights. Level 1 Elimination, Regulation 44, subsection 1. So far as is reasonably practicable, can we eliminate the risks associated with the fall risk? If it's not applicable, rendering work needs to be undertaken in place. Level 2, passive fall protection. Regulation 44 subsection 2 states, if it is not reasonably practical to eliminate the risk associated with a fall, could we reduce the risk so far as reasonably practical by using a passive fall protection approach, which is the installation, implementation of material or equipment or a combination thereof, such as a guardrail, that is designed to prevent a fall after initial installation and does not require any further adjustments, alterations or operations to ensure the integrity of the device to perform its function. Of the 12 passive fall protection options listed on the overhead, the use of mobile plant was the most likely option as it allows free movement between the upper sections of the building, and as a result control levels 3 to 5 were not needed. Okay, reasonably practical control chosen, but let's continue with levels 3, 4 and 5. Level 3, work positioning system, regulation 44 subsection 3. If it is not reasonably practical to reduce the risks associated with falls using passive fall protection devices, could we have reduced the risk so far as reasonably practical by using work positioning systems, which includes systems such as industrial rope or travel restraint system that enables a person to be positioned and safely supported at a work location. Rope systems are not practical as individuals would be in contact with the rendering works, and restraint systems would not allow us to get to the rendering works. Level 4, fall arrest system controls, regulation 44 subsection 4. If it is not reasonably practical to reduce the risk associated with a fall using a passive fall protection or work positioning system, could we reduce the risk so far as reasonably practical by using a fall arrest system, which is equipment or material that is designed to arrest a fall of a person? Effectively, level 4 and level 3 are the same. They would come in contact with the work. And finally, level 5, administrative controls and ladders, regulation 44, subsection 5. Level 5, if all else fails, could we reduce the risk so far as reasonably practical by using 1, a fixed or portable ladder, or 2, administrative controls, being a system of work or a work procedure that reduces the risk but does not include passive fall and or work positioning controls, or the use of personal protection equipment. The use of the ladder was an option, but the potential fall being over 2 metres, controls for falling off the ladder needed to be managed. Overall, the level 2 controls, which in this case was the use of the EWP, was the best control. Consultation guidelines outline what consultation means and what needs to be undertaken to achieve compliance, namely that employers consult with elected health and safety reps in matters affecting their designated work group, or where there is no health and safety rep, consultation is directly undertaken with the employees, including subcontractors who are directly affected by the work. Consultation should include sharing information about the work task process, using the SWIM process, and giving reasonable opportunity for the health and safety rep or employees to express views about the task and taking those views into account. While we should aim to reach agreement, it doesn't always occur. So remember, consultation means consultation. It does not necessarily mean agreement. As the employer, you are still ultimately responsible for making decisions about health and safety and controlling risks so far as reasonably practical. Finally, document what course of action is decided, who is responsible for implementing the action, and the anticipated completion date. If agreement cannot be reached, explain the course of action. The risk management journey to identify risks and hazards starts before the task even begins and does not stop until it is completed. You should implement controls using the hierarchy control methodology. In this case, the EWP was considered the best option as eliminating the risk was not an option. But in choosing the EWP, manage the risks introduced by the EWP, such as choose the right EWP for the task and ensure it's fit for use. Ensure documentation such as EWP risk assessment is available and is complied with. Only competent operators can operate the plant. SWIMs. SWIMs developed for high-risk task and plant use, developed for that specific task, taking into consideration the hazards and risks specific to that work environment. The subcontractor retains responsibility for control over the swim, having experienced an undertaking of the work method and associated hazards and risks. Principal contractor and subcontractor must not permit work to be undertaken if concerns have been raised about adequacy of the swim or risk controls within it. Reviewed by the principal contractor, that the swim meets legislative and or organisational requirements, monitored by the subcontractor and principal contractor, monitored for compliance with the swim should occur to ensure compliance with the swim and to identify changes in the work or environment, or previously unidentified hazards or risks and any need for modification of the swims. After managing all the risks associated with the EWP competency, location, work activity, would the event not have occurred had we simply foreseen that driving under a steel beam is a risk and written into the swim that the second person is to exit the EWP before it goes under the steel structure? I know it's a lot to take in. The key takeaway should be that there are many people that have a role to play in planning, operation and monitoring of the use of mobile plant. Each are equally important to the entire safety process around the high-risk activity. Thank you very much for your time. Further information is available on the screen.